Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jonathan Taylor. I'm an application engineer for civil survey applications. And today you are going to be presented to by not just myself, but my colleague who is in Melbourne. I'm in Sydney, Todd Brewster. How you going, Todd?
Very good. Yourself?
Good. Audios are working beautifully as well, which is fantastic.
Good to
Uh,
know.
Indeed. Now we've got a couple of housekeeping bits and pieces that we need to do just prior to kicking off. We get asked this question in every single webinar, normally by people who aren't at this point joined, but it is recorded and will go onto our YouTube channel, which we will advertise at the very, very end on a final slide, but lots of other goodies for to and resources and whatnot to give you to go away with. And it will be normally available, I would expect, within the next 24 hours. And the other important part, I would say, for this, most important during the webinar, is if you do have, excuse me 1 second, if you do have any questions regarding what you're seeing in this particular webinar, and there are going to be lots of individual elements to this webinar, so it's going to be probably difficult to manage a Q&A if everyone's asking questions about anything and everything related to what they're saying. But the Q&A that we have is on the Zoom bar that you'll see. Please use that to send us any questions. If you do send it to the chat, it's unlikely it will get seen. So if you put a question in and wondering why we're not responding or don't seem to be addressing it, it's probably because it's gone into the chat. But we will endeavor to either break the flow of the webinar and potentially address the question immediately, or potentially ask the question at the end and sort of bookend the session with any potential questions, those that we can answer anyway. So on that, yes, it's our pleasure to introduce you to the V26 features. And I guess with this, we'll just kick on with the first slide, Todd. So as he furiously clicks his button there, uh,
Yes,
there,
yes.
there we go. The release for this is early June 2025. And the main release goals, really as usual this time of year for us, is the compatibility with the Autodesk 2026 release, and namely the obviously AutoCAD and Civil 3D, which have been released. As part of this, and with every release that we do, regardless of the scale, we've generally got improvements, new features, which we'll be seeing today, and then fixes added in. But crucially, there is kind of one major item which you'll get to see some glimpses of next week. There is going to be a webinar on it, which is the implementation of cloud licensing as an option for those of you that are interested. So that webinar will be advertised at the end of the session with a QR code. That is next Wednesday, and our wonderful IT team will be doing a presentation on that. As we've already kind of pointed out, the platform compatibility with Civil Site Design V26 is not limited to just Civil 3D AutoCAD V20 2026, which I do still get questions on every so often. People say, "Well, we haven't upgraded. I can't get it." Well, you can all the way back to 2019, BricsCAD 21 and 25, or up to 25, and then Civil Site Design Plus, which normally gets released a fraction later than this current release, or this sorry, this forthcoming release. So we've got a few different features, Todd, that we're going to be talking to. These are the main ones that we're going to be showing in this webinar. So Todd, if you want,
Yep.
whilst I'm controlling the PowerPoint in Sydney, um,
It's like remote control across the
it is,
states.
it is.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan. So yeah, it's a bit of a tag team effort from us. So hopefully you don't get too confused. But I'm going to show you some of one of the new functions that we've thrown into the software in 26, which is our IFC export, which now supports the 4.3 file format, which includes road elements. So if you're needing to share stuff via IFC, it's a really nice way to manage that for yourself. I'm also going to show you how the new point cloud import from LAS file works. So this replaces our old one that well, you can still get it through Model Viewer, but it's been removed from the
Mm.
menu calls for the model drop downs. This one's a nicer way of doing it. So we'll have a look at this one. Then we'll have a look at a very new and exciting piece of kit that we've thrown into the software in the vertical grading editor, which is our new Optimiser. So this is an AI-driven tool to allow you to do a first pass, best fit type approach, but you now have control over the elements that go into it. So we'll have a play around with that. And then now it's probably over to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, do you know what? I was looking at that next item thinking Todd's not going to talk about this. Yeah, so with V25 came custom variations, and with the quantity of custom variations that are now going to the software, there was discussion around making it easier for people to essentially catalog and create libraries of the variations. So hopefully, some interest there, particularly as I'd say about 80% of the standard variations that you guys currently use, if you haven't used custom, we have now recreated as custom variations almost identically, but you've got the option to now activate and deactivate them because they're custom. So we'll take a look at that. And then lastly, for the CAD users, so non-Civil 3D platform, we have the new Best Fit alignment tool, which can be used in association with Kogo points and a polyline. And then in addition, and sort of complementary to that, we have a clone profile tool. Now, we have a second slide. So some of these items may pop up during the presentation, but in fact, some of them I know for a fact are because one of them is mine, but some of them may not. But so we're just sort of highlighting some of the other aspects or functionality improvements that have gone into civil site design without necessarily having to go into detail in showing them. So Todd, I guess the
Yeah,
big
first
one
your
for us
mind.
is, yeah,
Yep.
project storage.
So yeah, project storage, and you will see this because I'm going to start up one of my projects from scratch. So those of you who've been running the later versions of 25, so I think it's 25.01 and 25.1 and 25.11, project storage dialog box pops up, and the option that's highlighted on the screen there in the little screenshot is automatically ticked. Well, we reverse that in 26 where it actually is unticked by default and you can opt into the project storage. But I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into it.
Oh, sorry,
If
Todd.
anyone,
Do you know what?
Oop.
Sorry, there you go.
um, section sampling. So we've now got the option to apply multiple layers. Um, and I'm also going to throw in and have a look at the corridor export. The subgrade model managers had some improvements done on the resolve to the behind back of curb stuff, and the adaptive decimate on the CSD surface is quite cool. So I'm going to have a look at that one as well. And then I think probably the other two are yours, Jonathan. So the
Uh,
subgrade and the Kogo.
yeah, I mean, the subgrade by code is something that's going to be helpful, and it will sort of tie into what Todd's showing with the IFC,
Yep.
whereby if you've got multiple codes being generated, and I guess one of the best and most simple examples is, a bench. You can now put a wildcard in for the subgrade pairing, which means that you get multiple subgrades being applied. And yeah, import Kogo, not something I will be showing today, but the ability to basically import Kogo points based on the geometry of an alignment and have them offset from that, which can be useful for potentially things like signage and whatnot with Kogo points, but not something we're going to be showing today. So, Todd, we might as well begin in earnest. I'll just flick to the next slide, which is what I inadvertently did a minute ago. We'll just get rid of that in the edit,
Yep.
and I'll
No
hand over
worries.
to
I'm
you.
just flipping over to my screen, make sure I've got the right one. Hopefully you can see my Civil 3D.
Yes.
Beautiful. All right. So I'm running on Civil 3D 2026, but as Jonathan said, the CSD V26 will be backwards compatible back through to, I think, 19. So if you're still running 25, 24, this will work perfectly fine. The CSD version is not paired to the Civil AutoCAD, BricsCAD version. They're kind of separated. Like anyway, hopefully it makes sense. But first thing I'm going to want to show you guys is how to bring in the new point file from LAS, or sorry, surface from LAS. So if you're running the Civil 3D version, it lives on the Site tab, and it sits here under the import panel. If you're running the CAD-based version, so the BricsCAD AutoCAD versions, then I think it sits under the import panel on the Surface tab. So it's pretty straightforward. You run the command. So this will be where that new project storage question pops up. So this will come up for any project you start. You have to answer it. If you don't answer it, then it'll keep asking you. You don't have to populate the name and description, but if you want to track that sort of stuff, you can. At minimum, you have to hit proceed. to continue along using Civil Site Design as you would normally have done with the traditional file structure of the drawing and the dash data folder. If you want to utilize the new project storage, or it's what we call it now, but it used to be called pack mode, same thing. You tick the option on, and then the software will bind the data into the drawing every time you save it. It will localize it out to being into a local temporary file, which is not subject to any of the cleanup functionality that Windows might do in terms of things like storage sense or whatnot. And you can actually manage a history on that. So as every time you open and close your project and save it, the version of the data that goes with your project gets re-extracted, and the older one from previous days or weeks or whatever it is are actually there in history, and you can actually roll backwards and forwards. So it's actually quite funky. So there are some nice YouTube videos if you want to know how it all works. Click on that link there and you can jump in and see how it goes. I hit proceed. I get back to being just a normal project like per normal. So this is asking me to find my LAS files. One big thing about this is you can pick multiple files at once, and then it'll make a surface of the combined LAS that you've selected. So if I come in here, I'm going to pick these three files. So first thing it does is assess the files. It tells you that there's three. If you want to know what the volume of data that's going to come in from that is, it'll tell you there the point count. So it's assessed the files and worked out I've got 2.2 million odd points. And I'm probably sitting here going, ooh, that's a bit many. You've got a couple of options. You could hit this downsample button, which I will do in a sec, or you could proceed to build the surface and the new adaptive decimate kicks in. So I'm going to try and show you both. So I've already done the adaptive decimate on another file. I'll show you that in a sec. I'm going to do the Dan sample now. So I'm going to pick a voxel. I will explain what a voxel is in a sec, but I'll let the thing build in the background while it's building. So if I go Dan sample there, you'll see that it tells me now I've reduced it down to about nearly just under 700,000 points. So I'm going to create the surface, give it a new name, base. So a voxel is uh, I'll be honest, I Googled this. A voxel is a three-dimensional counterpart to a pixel, which I thought was kind of a cool expression. What it really means, it's a cube. It's a represents a value in a regular grid in three-dimensional space that is pushed across the surface. The number essentially is the size. The smaller the number, the less downsampling. So it goes through and assesses everything inside the cube, work out a value to represent the pieces inside. So it kind of filters out all the fluff. And point clouds are usually full of information that's probably overloading things. Like you scan something and you get 1,000 points to represent the edge of a curve. You only really need two. So a voxel is a way of manipulating it. And we use voxel because it's three-dimensional, because point clouds usually have quite a lot of vertical data involved. So this is the surface that the software is built from that LAS series of LAS files. So as I said, it was three files, but it's built me only one surface. And if I go into the Surface Manager and have a look at the statistics, you'll see the details of the surface. So if I come in here and you can see now, it's built me my surface of my 680,000 points, which is all the downsampled stuff. So that's the new surface import from LAS. They all get the names LAS dash and whatever you call it. So again, we always add the prefix in to identify what surface it's coming from. But yeah, that's how it works. Um, if I look at this project here, this is the same point file, but this time when I've already imported this because it does take a little longer. I imported the full 2.2 million points. And so when I get control over the computer, because it does take a sec to read everything, because this surface is a lot larger. Um, Same surface, but this time if I go and look at my stats on the surface, while this thing's booting up, I'll just give you a little description on what the adaptive decimate does. So project could contain a surface model that has a lot of points. And in this case here, it's 2.2 million or 2.2 million odd. The adaptive decimate protects the system integrity in regards to large tin surfaces by automatically reducing their complexity. When a surface has too many points, the feature activates, dividing it into cells. Flatter cells are simplified into just four corners with an average elevation across it, drastically taking out excessive data while preserving the overall shape. Cells with greater height variations are further analyzed and refined, and the whole process maintains the integrity, manageability, and accuracy of the surface. So, as I said, this is the full 2.2 million point file, but if I actually look at the numbers in it, It actually has only built a surface of about 1.7 million points. So the surface is far more detailed than the previous one. But as I said, this is the adaptive, sorry, decimate, and it kicks in automatically. You don't get control over it. The software just does it to maintain the system integrity. But that's the difference between the two surfaces. All right. Let's move across to the next thing. So the next one I want to show you is a couple of things related to alignment creation and model creation. So I'm going to use this project here. So the first one I'm actually going to talk about is that sampling by layer. So I'm hoping everybody knows what sample by layer is. It's actually a very old function in the software. It's been around for a very long time, but it has been recently enhanced, probably about version 25 maybe, or maybe even version 24, to incorporate multiple object types as opposed to just lines and arcs. But in V26, it's been enhanced further to allow you to pick multiple layers. So probably best shown by an example. So if I come up here and I grab my MC1 and make a road, so it's just make it into a rural road. And if I come down here to this button here in the add string command, and this is, as I said, the new environment. So you pick the layers you're interested in. So as you can see by my very original names, these are the four object types that it's looking for. So you can actually use the vertices of 3D polylines. You can use the start and ends of arcs. You can use the start and ends of lines, and you can use the vertices of 2D polylines. And actually, you can add as many layers as you like. You can also remove them if there's one you put in by mistake. You need to tell it how far to look. So I'm going to go say 25 meters. And you obviously want to add these plus all the original sampling in. Click on OK, make the road, and delete this because that'll go for the next bit. I now have my road sitting in here. To see my string sampling locations, I click on the string in the tool space here and I go toggle on off the section lines and I can see all the sample spots. Now to highlight where I've actually put in things, I did set up the layers to be line weighted. So all the pink ones, these ones are all my lines. The red one here is my arc. The blue one is my polylines. And the white ones, which I can't make thick, so it's these ones, are my 3D polylines. And if you actually look, you can see all the vertices of those things are being tracked as sample points inside my model. Now, you can make changes to these things and just refresh the sampling. So I had done these polylines here as a way of tracking the center points of all of the trees because I thought they might be needed to see if I'm creating my road and killing a tree, which that one's pretty much dead anyway. But maybe I've decided that these two trees here aren't part of it. So I can actually just come to the polyline, make an edit. So I'll just remove the vertices on these. Oops, go a little slower. And then I resample the job. You can see those two sample points that lined up with those two trees disappear. So anytime you make a change to the source objects within the search distance, hit the resample and they all update. So actually quite a useful tool for sampling things graphically as opposed to numerically. All right, let's have a look at the cool one, the vertical grading optimizer. So get back into here. I'm sure you're all well and truly aware of the default auto grading that happens when you create a string. You saw it a few minutes ago when I opened this up and then deleted it. Um, that is hard coded to the software. You don't get much choice. It just drapes it straight on top of the terrain model. Don't really get any control on anything to do with the VCs, anything to do with the grades, anything to do with any of the level differences. The new exciting piece that we've added to the kit is the Optimize functionality inside the vertical grading editor. This allows you to create the vertical profile based on some parameters that you get control over. With the new tool, you get to create a vertical profile that incorporates some design criteria that will leapfrog you to the start of your design process. So it's not going to design it for you, but it's going to get you to that first point of making a reasonable design quicker. It's based on a generic algorithm, so it's AI based, which processes many designs against your criteria to try and achieve the overall best fit. The user has the ability to tweak the algorithm in regards to things called mutation and crossover, which is how much it drifts from version 1 to version 2 type stuff. And there are three at the moment, and this is only our first generation of this, three components or elements that you can control, which are things like cut fill depth at the center line, grade, and a generic K value. And you can basically set your desired value, and then you can push the weighting around on the three of those things. So you can say, well, I'm most impressed with wanting to get something to do with maybe grades, not so keen on K values, or not so keen on cut fill depth, or you can turn it off altogether. And then when it completes, it'll give you a overall fitness score on how well it's achieved and whether or not it's had to penalize one of those things because it's had to break one of your required, also not required, your desired settings. So where do you find this? It's on the ribbon up the top in the VGE. It's now called Optimize. So you can break this up into range, so you don't have to do it for your entire string. You tell it how often along that range it does. So that's the segment length. You can set some minimum, maximum VCs. The settings and the components over here are how you can control that stuff I was just talking about. So settings is where you can set the basics. I'll be honest, I just leave these usually on the defaults. The only one you may want to muck around with is this generations. This is related to when you hit optimize, it'll only run for 200 generations, as opposed to if you hit start, it'll run until you hit stop. So you could run it while you're away for lunch, come back, and it might have gone through 1,000 generations or something like that. But that's where you play with those settings. The components is probably the key one. So in components, it's the criteria you're interested in setting for your string. So cut fill depth is related to the level difference for the center line. So I don't want 3 meters. I probably only want maybe half a meter. Um, Grade 1 to 10%, it's pretty good, although this is a pretty flat part of the world. You probably didn't see the vertical exaggeration, but it's like 50 times. But I'm interested in the grade being used far more over the top of cut and fill. So I'm going to slide the slider right up, push it up around 70. And then K value here, it's just a singular fit. So K at 5 is probably pretty good because that'll cover me for both crest and sag. Click OK, and then I click on Optimize, and it will give you a little warning. It'll say that if you don't like the solution, then you can undo it and it'll restore back to what you had previously. But I'm going to click it on, and it'll start thinking. And it tells you down the bottom here, what are you thinking about? While that's flashing up, it's actually running those mutations and generating all of the versions and checking them against the criteria and calculating a score, and then using that to evolve to create the next one. And it continues to do that. And as I said, it'll do it to the auto stop values that were in that setting. I'm hoping it'll get to a point soon. I can hear my computer kicking in, so it's using all my cores. And you can actually go off and do other things while it's doing this. It's not completely and utterly consuming your entire computer resources. Eventually, it'll flash up done down here, and then there'll be a score sitting next to it. So if you can see there, it says 98, I think it is. You can actually click on that score and you can see what it's done. So it'll tell you on the range that it's done. The fitness score is how well it's fitted based on the criteria and the weightings you asked for. And then the penalty fields are about whether or not it had to penalize the solution because it may not have been able to achieve your desired value. So say your world's really, really steep and you said, I want a maximum grade of 10%, but the world's steeper than that and it's like 15, it would have hit a penalty on the grade because it's had to exceed your desired values. And then you can actually see the result sitting there in the background. If you hit start, then it would run continuing doing that until the button changes to stop until you hit the stop button. So that's the one where you can actually run it, as I said, over lunch, come back, and you might see a solution that might be slightly better. But to be honest, that's pretty reasonable. Um, but yeah, from this point forward, you can do the design as you see fit. All right. So that's the cool one. So let me just jump across to my last example. So this one here.
Obviously,
So
not to say that they're not all cool, Todd. Just don't undermine anything that I'm going to do, for example.
they're all cool. Everything we do is cool. Let's just go with that.
Yeah, let's go with that. Yeah. Okay.
I know the AI one's cool because it's
It
like,
is.
it's calculating stuff, and it's this idea of mutations and generations and stuff. It's like, yeah, it's all that cool terminology. Um, where was it? Oh, another part to the string optimizing functionality is there's actually a version of that that you can apply to successive roads. So in this particular network here, there's actually 4 roads I've got set up. So there's my people have probably seen this if they've done any training with any of us. Islet Street and Road 1, 2, and 3, which actually have real names now. They're things like Nethercoot Street and stuff like that. I did look them up because this is a real job. The software up here in the ribbon tab under roads, there's actually a new command call called String Profile Optimizer, which is a subsidiary of the one in the VGE, where you can actually, I won't run this because it'll take too long, but the idea here is you could say, well, I want to pick them all, or you could pick selectively which ones you do or don't want to actually run this for. And you can change the order. So I go, well, I don't actually want road 2 done first. I think road 2 should be second. You can set some basic parameters. You can then hit the optimize profile and it will warn you it's going to override everything. And I'm actually going to say no here, but I would normally say yes and let it go.
Todd, can I just
Um,
interrupt you just 1 second? Only because
yes.
we've had someone just comment on the fact that there's no sound. I'm just going to just
Oh,
run, yeah, which is unusual. I'm going to run just a quick, just going to get the participants list up. If you, well, yeah, if you can hear us, if you can raise your hand, just in the thing, in the, sorry, the thing, in the panel. Yeah, I think everyone can hear. Apologies, there's a chap called Steve who can't hear us. So, yeah, okay,
okay.
not a problem. Continue on.
No worries. I just got some notes from some of our colleagues saying that the sound was all good for them as well. So, yeah. Um, where was I? Oh, so you can run this successively. The interesting thing here is it will actually respect your intersection. So when it runs the, I just saw a joke. There's a Mexican wave in the chat. Um, when you run this and you've got some intersections formed, like I have in this, I'm actually going to say no, close out of it. It actually respects the intersection for you. So it treats that like a locked part of the VG, though. So the string grade for that particular road. So that when it tries to optimize, say, road number 2 up here, it's not going to try and change this beginning because that's actually anchored to road number 1 here. So that string optimizer version, even if you're in the normal one inside the VG, it will respect your intersection zones. So yeah. I mean, you can also use the change range to limit it down, but you can also break it up by protecting your intersections as well. Okay, next thing I want to show you was the updates that we've done to the section volume calculation. So in my job here, it's pretty stock standard road network. And if I come to my section volume tools, so this is the newer tool we added into the software a couple of versions ago, which is kind of the same approach as to what the traditional volume tool does, but it's more graphical. So you see the polygons down the bottom, it makes it much more succinct. It's polygon based as opposed to just numbers on a screen. Just calculate the string. But now it actually allows you to select which model the strings are coming from. So the way it works typically is whatever's ticked here summates to the totals at the bottom. Whichever one you've got listed up the top of the form here or selected on the left here is the singular string that you're seeing values for. Now, the software very nicely does the trimming for you based off whatever model you've got selected. So this is total model. So if I come up here and what am I looking at? Around chaining to 280 on Islet Street. So if I make that a little wider so I can see it, 280 here. You can see in this version of my cross section at around 280, I've lost everything on the left. That's because it's slicing out all of this zone based off my model builder. Sorry, my total model edits to incorporate the curb returns. And then I'd have to come to one of the curb returns to see what's happening for that particular region of the model. And if I looked on road 1 and I look at the start of road 1, you can see the first couple of cross sections of road 1 are blank. There's no data because that's only up until this point is when the cross section kicks in for one of the curb returns that meets, because this one doesn't meet till this point over here. This one meets here. So I'm seeing this region of my data, and it's not until I get to somewhere down past here where I can see the full cross section. That's current behavior on the current version of the software commercially released. The new bit is the ability here to pick a different model. So I've actually got a second model sitting in here in the background. So let me just turn it on so you can see what I'm talking about. So I'll turn off total model, switch the lines. So there's a cut down version of total model sitting here now, which is just pretty much the intersection and the first sort of region of road 1. And if I flip that across to being my model for calculations, then this begins to trim down. I can actually use this button here to say, well, I actually only want to see the strings in my calculations related to that model, which is what that button does. So what it does is it auto unticks everything that's not related to however your model was built. So this is model builder models we're talking about. Um, and so if I now go and have a look at the same parts of the world, so if I go say Islet Street, you can see all this stuff's red because it's no longer part of the calculations. It's not until I get down here to change to 50, which is this part of the world, it's where it starts to kick in. And you'll see that it stops around 295, which is up here where the model ends. The same for road one. So if I look at road one, beginning's missing because it's still part of the intersection, but anything beyond chainage 80 here is all sliced out because my model ends at that point. So all these things here, it's all blank. So now you actually have the ability to pick which string model is being used for the calculation inside the section calculations. Okay. Next two are the more output type functionality. So I'm going to have a look at the corridor output and that IFC. So to try and tap onto two things. So there was a question in the chat, which I did answer early on, which was about in model viewer, can you see the thicknesses of things? No, you can't. Model viewer is just about the top surface. Subgrade model manager would be the way where you'd see the thicknesses of things. But corridor, if you've got Civil 3D, is a way of sharing your model across to corridor object, which is a Civil 3D road model network, which could be shared out, used for volumes. But the IFC is probably the nicest way to see the thicknesses of things. So I'll do both of those now. So corridor first. So if I go and make a corridor, we'll use total model. So we get the whole network, 26. Yeah, that's all good. So we've optimized the performance on this. So it's now much faster to build. And it also builds a lot less assemblies. It only builds the bits it needs to make the entire network. So it generates the output much faster and it uses a lot less of the assemblies. So I don't know if anyone's used this previously, but usually you would have probably ended up with about 30 odd different assemblies there for your network. Whereas now you've only got pretty much the different geometric situations for the road network. And that object there, if you take the corridor and throw it out into something where you can view it, this is the one where you can actually start to see thickness of things. So you can see all the layers. So the layers will be based off what I'd set up in my Civil Site Design. So that's one way to see the thickness of things. But I think probably the one that you want to muck around with is the IFC. So to pull an IFC out, I click over here and I go, I want to export an IFC. So this is there using the IFC 4.3 schema or classification. So if you don't know what IFC stands for, it's not for issued for construction. It actually stands for Industry Foundation Class, and 4.3 incorporates road entities. So it actually has classifications and componentry related to roads. So let's go total model. Let's pull out the surface because you can build terrains out as well. And I'll create the thing for this. I'll just dump it on the desktop. And the nice bit is that we don't actually view it. Software creates the file, and then you would need some sort of viewing tool. So I'm using a thing called BIM Vision, which is a freebie viewing tool to view my IFC. So if your computer has something installed that views a IFC file, it will auto boot it up for you. And this is what you get. So the viewer does all the generation of the graphics. So I might turn the surface off, but there's the surface. And that's my road network built out as essentially extruded solids, but the solids actually have information. So I've actually, in the model, I actually added thicknesses to all of my elements. So I added materials to my batters and my verges and whatnot. But each one of these things is actually over here is a component. And then it's based off the road or the element that we're mucking around with. So I think we're looking at Islet Street. And then you've got all the different pieces within Islet Street. So, but you can also click on one of them and you'll see it. And it gives you the individual piece. Or if you go back up to the top, you can see the entire. I should use the scroller. There we go. Come up here. I can go, that's all of the curb. See how it highlights my entire curb? And I can just potentially take it off, take it out. But underneath, you get to see information about it. So you can actually see details on it, classification. Well, there's none set, but you can see what it is. And you could actually, if you've got a fancy version of the IFC viewer type stuff, you can actually do quantity takeoff for this sort of stuff because these are all volume based solids that have been extruded. So it's like the B-rep mold that we used to make out in the model viewer. But yeah, that is some of the new things that coming in regards to your versions of Civil Site Design. So that's some of the output stuff and some of the new AI-based things. But Jonathan, I am pretty much at the end of the things that I wanted to show off. So it is over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll let you keep your screen up while I share mine. Replace the share, and we'll go screen two. There we go. And yeah, for those of you that there's been almost cross-country Q&A going on where some of you have been answering the questions for some of the other attendees, which has been fantastic. And a lot of it's been to do with point clouds, how, converting, for example, LAZ files. I appreciate Elvis data generally comes in as LAZ, and there is a tool which I think
Yeah,
I'll just
I
brief
did gloss over
you
this bit.
did.
I forgot to
Oh, no,
highlight it. So my mistake.
there,
Um,
yeah, look, there's a tool.
yeah.
I don't actually have a file to bring it.
Do you want to
Uh,
give me the screen back for a second? I can at least show them. I don't have the tool, but I can show them where there's a link to get to it.
Do you know what? I don't need to do it. I will
Ah,
bring up the presentation because on the screenshot of the presentation, there is a
ah,
highlight. There you go. Right. So there are some
there.
tools you can get here. There's others if you have a look in the chat. But I mean, even myself, I think I've used one of the ones which was mentioned in the Q&A, sorry, um, to convert LAZ to LAS. But there are a number of free tools out there. Obviously, the big one being Recap. Obviously, if you haven't got Recap or don't have access to it, then have a look. And this tool is
Yeah.
just something we have,
Yeah. If you're using Recap, you'd use Recap and then bring it into Civil 3D and
you
go that
would
way
anyway.
anyway. Yeah.
Yes, you
So
would.
you wouldn't need to use the CSD import.
No. But yeah, a number of other questions. I've tried to answer them as best I can, but with the time permitting, and actually some of the questions that are asked, which have been fantastic, haven't had a chance to go through all of them. I'm going to close the Q&A down because bit like me, Todd, you probably don't want it sitting there in off to one side, keep flashing at you saying
Yes, I
what's
did
going
have
on.
it closed. I just saw one about the hyperlink. Someone didn't notice that it was sitting there. So yeah,
No,
look,
it's
that
all
was
good.
my fault for not highlighting it. But yes, there is a little link there for our tool that you could use.
Yeah, yeah. Whilst there are others available on the market.
100%.
Okay, I'm going to be running the CAD version only because it saves me having to go back and forth. So everything I'm showing you regarding the design data form is on this data set. This happens to be our training data set. So it's a little plug if you haven't done the reconstruction training or you've got team members that are looking to do training. This is actually very close to the result that we end up with at the end of our training for the reconstruction course. The reason why I've got it like this is to sort of talk to um, what's going on with the variations. I'm going to just head to Toolspace and open up the design data form for this particular road. Now, the first thing to note is it's littered with variations. It's also littered with comments, which any good designer using our software should implement. A little bit of a plug there. I'm going to head to variations. And if you're using version 25 at the moment, you'll notice that we have custom variations. When we double click on this, what you would normally see is just a list of custom variations. And the discussion around this was, well, hey, we're probably going to end up with more of these being created. We're going to have to kind of catalog them in a way where um, we can at least break them down rather than having a giant list, which is it's going to become difficult to manage and certainly as a user, difficult to interpret what's in there. So this is our sort of I say first pass, it's probably unlikely to change, but this is pretty much where we're at the moment with regards to the initial instance that you'll get when you install the software. Now, if you've installed the software previously and you've got scriptx files, they will live underneath and be listed underneath all these folders. I'll show you in a second how you can manage them. But if you're installing version 26 for the first time and you haven't installed version 25, this is what it will look like. You won't have any other variations underneath. Now, what we've done is we've created a selection of sort of, as best we can describe, folders that sort of indicate what the variations might be doing. Um, Batters and projections. And we've put all of the relevant custom variations that relate to batters and projections in here. So if you were immediately thinking in your head, well, I need to look at something to do with, a batter in some regard, rather than sort of scrolling through that list, we've sort of tried to put them into one spot. I'll click this back button. The others that we have in here, things like modify, we've tried to again put all the modify ones together. And then we've got what we call favorites. Now, let me just talk to where these folders actually live because it's completely customizable. So if I click on Open ScriptX folder, this is where they live. Now, when you install the software, you will get all of these folders. Okay. Within them, you'll get the scripts. As I said, if you've installed version 25, you will see all of the scripts that you currently use, if you've used them, living underneath. Now, if you haven't touched them or changed them in any way, i.e., edited them, then you can simply just delete them because they all now live in one of these folders. Now, the good thing about this is that the folders, if you decide to create a new one, and you'll get this one with the installation, but if you decide to create a new folder, let's just go and create one here called webinar, and then you decide that you want to grab one of the, I don't know, we'll go benching, and then you pop that into webinar. This could effectively be a favorites. If I now come back into this, I'll just close this form down. If I go back into custom variations, there's webinar and there's my variation. So you can copy them out. Now, importantly, there is one thing I need to note here, which is the download scripts button. The folder structure that you can see here is effectively, other than folders that you create, is sacrosanct. So if, for example, I go into here and delete 3 or 4 of these variations, or in fact, move them out, cut and paste them, when you click download scripts, what it does is it goes to our server, looks at our server, imports all of them back in again to make sure you're running the very latest. Okay. So essentially, if you go into this one here, insert benching and cut, edit it, and then you click download scripts, we'll effectively go in and overwrite it. So the great thing is you can now move that out in Windows Explorer and copy it out into a folder that is yours, and we do not touch these folders. Okay. We only look for the folders that we've created. Speaking of folders, there's standard variations. This is a discussion I've had with multiple users over the past 12 months since 25 came out, was about the fact that we have variations which are all new, but what about the existing ones and can we recreate them? Well, yes, not all of them, because unfortunately ScriptX doesn't have all of the technology wrapped into it to enable me to recreate every single variation, but we have tried to do as many of them as possible. Okay, and the reason why you may be thinking, well, why would you need these sitting in custom for? I know what insert section is, I know what set code offset to polyline are. It's because of this option, which is really the key discussion point I was having with customers. Here is match to surface, okay, the original. So as you'd use it currently in the design data form. Here is match to surface as a custom variation. The only difference, and we've tried to stick to the variations as much as possible in regards to just things like wording, etc. Make sure they're as similar as possible, is this button here. So I can actually input or create a variation which is match to surface, then deactivate it. Obviously, what you can't do at the moment, which is something we discuss with users, particularly in training, is how you go about deactivating an existing variation. And generally, that's blanking the code or putting in a change range which doesn't exist. But now you have the option to activate and deactivate if you want to. Again, it's optional, custom variations, standard variations, and you can go in and cherry pick those. And again, they will get overwritten when you click download unless you move them outside of that particular folder structure. Same goes with, for example, even renaming. If I rename this file, okay, and I click download, I'll get another copy of it when I click when that download happens. One thing that I'm going to just highlight to you is what's going on in the drawing. This was something I remember as being a customer request, is this ability now to highlight in the drawing the extent of the variation. So if I just come down to, say, this one here, which is a saw cut being introduced, you can see that what we'll actually do is highlight for you along the main string, obviously along the center line of the main string, the extent of that variation. Unfortunately, what I've done here is pick variations that are all just going through the entire extent of the alignment, but that's a good one to show you. Now, really the cherry on the cake for me is what I'm going to show you now, because we have introduced some new custom variations that are not just the standard ones. And I'm going to give credit to Shane O'Rourke for this one, because this is just absolute gold. This is a bit like the layback for us, where we've gone, oh, great, I can do a layback. What I'm going to show you here is living, just so I'm just going to show you where it is. we've got one called task specific. And the reason why I've called it task specific is because it's intended to achieve one thing, has kind of one goal. Parking bay with a dish has one goal. Put a parking bay in, but put a dish through the parking bay. Okay. Let's just have a look and you see, layback. It has a goal of putting in a layback. Let's close this down. This is the variation, which is being it's deactivated, which is great. I haven't put it in yet. The idea with, in fact, let's just activate it. Let's just put it in. I've put the numbers in and then I'll talk to it. Now I'm in the wrong spot entirely. There we go. That's the problem with real estate on a drawing. We'll go left, invert code attachment. Yeah, here we go. So let's put this in and recalculate. I'll talk to the recalculate button. I'm not going to spend heaps of time on this because we are going to be running through this at a rate of knots. I've already got model viewer open. That is absolutely typical for me to have minimized it. Let me show you what this actually looks like. Refresh, and I'm just going to rebuild the model. This is the single application of that variation. Okay. That dish is now being introduced pretty much perfectly as we then transition into that parking bay and then out. One of the problems we've had in the past is this slope here. How do I maintain this slope from the edge of the dish rather than it always being from the control, which was normally the edge of bitumen? Well, the way that this has now been managed is simply through this control here. So I want to have a crossfall of 5. It will now introduce a new parking bay code for me, 5% from the edge of the dish. If I click add update, I should have put the labels on a model viewer for this. That's now introduced a 5% slope. Now, the great thing is we've introduced also different taper methods. You can use your own alignment, by the way, for this, but you've got linear. You can introduce increase the bay width. So maybe I make the bay width 5, maybe make that taper length 20. We can set the reverse taper. There's a number of things we can do in here. One of the great things is you'll notice that footpath is bang on against the back of the curb, and that's because we can hold the offset and current slope. Basically, stick it where it currently resides. Okay, so I can actually put a nature strip bay width in here of say maybe 2 meters, and we'll just go out update, recalculate with the custom variation, folks. People are not seeing that is a button you need to click on. You do need to click on it, and you need to click on auto model. That was an interesting number for me to have put in. I think I've possibly put in the wrong numbers. Oh no, that's right. The linear. There we go. Of course I haven't. So that's that longer taper. Anyway, have a bit of a play with that one. It's absolute gold and worth exploring. So there are others. I'm just doing a plug for my own one. Multiple codes to surface. If you use match to surface a lot, it can be irritating if you want to run match to surface on 5 codes at the same chainage. There's a new one in there under modify called match multiple codes to surface, and it literally over a chainage range will stick all of your codes that you nominate onto a surface for you with a potential conditional cut and fill option in there as well, which is nice. All right, let's now just have a quick look where we are in respect of the schedule. I can see all these red lights going off for the chat and Q&A, which is wonderful. Let's have a quick look at the best fit. All right, so yes, I've had a bit of a play on this before, which is why Total Model ghosted in there just for 1 second. So we've got the option now this is exclusively for the BricsCAD, AutoCAD, and CSD Plus users to now best fit an alignment. Now, you can currently, if we go to the alignments tab, simply use create alignment, pick your polyline, and away you go. Now, it's not always the case that you get a polyline to pick. It could be that you've got survey data, such as these COGO points here, which we have conveniently brought in, and you essentially want to fit through those COGO points, or indeed you do want to use that particular polyline. Now, we're going to just try the polyline option first using this option here. We haven't got it in tool space, but it's currently sitting on the ribbon. We're going to click best fit alignment, and this form will pop up. So we're going to leave the name as alignment 1. We're going to use the method of polyline first of all. We're going to select the polyline and then pick the polyline that we've drawn. Now, at this point, you can actually get a preview of how this is going to look. So I'm simply going to click on create update, and I'm not going to leave the form. This is initially what we get. So essentially, what it's doing is interpreting the points or the vertices on that polyline, then determining, based on some of these variables underneath, what it potentially can fit through those particular vertices or points along that polyline. As you can see, we're sort of getting something relatively rough, but could probably do with a little bit of refinement. So whilst this form is open, we're in a position to improve this. I say improve, but change it. Okay, so we've got the curve detection slider here. Now, what this essentially does is assesses different options between the tangents and curves. One thing that I've learned from using this tool and others that are available on other products is that when you have different polyline vertices that are connected like this, it can be extremely difficult to interpret the direction of the next potential tangent. You might be looking at potentially reverse curves if you were to do it very close segments. So the result that you get is quite impressive considering the number of vertices that are on here. I'm going to bring this curve detection. I'm going to zoom out so you can actually see the result. You'll see the annotation here. I'm going to bring this down. So I'm reducing the assessment or evaluation between the tangents. If I increase it, watch what's happening. As I'm moving this slider up, I'm saying, look, I want you to have a much bigger view or evaluation over those tangents. And essentially, you get something which obviously this is completely unusable at this particular point, but it's doing what we've asked. Now I'm going to bring this all the way down, okay, which has actually given us a small arc in that particular area. Now, if you want to see what it's doing with regards to the design at the same time, you can actually click the grid editor. And you can see there that it's forcing in, wherever possible, the minimum radius, but working up to the maximum radius that we've got there of 1,000. Now, if I close this down and then change the tolerance, so this is the refinement. This is where we can fine tune the result. It's not always going to give us a significant amount of change, but it might. Now, I'm just going to bring that right down. You can see that that radius has been reduced. In fact, if we go back to the grid editor now, what you'll find is that it will try and adopt the small. So if you bring that tolerance down, it will endeavor to try and get as close to the smaller radius as possible. When you move that tolerance up, you're basically giving it more free rein to head up towards the maximum curve radius. Whilst you're doing this, you are building an editable alignment. So at the end of the day, if this is not 100%, bearing in mind you're feeding it something to try and create an alignment, if it's not 100%, you can click Create Update Alignment, click on Close, and edit it. Okay, so I've got myself an entirely editable alignment. I can go in and change that radius. I can introduce new IPs. I can do what I want with it. It's a fantastic first pass. Now, all I'm going to do is just very quickly delete that alignment, just in tool space, just quickly show you the other option before we jump into clone. So I don't have to do anything here. The only thing about the Kogo points option, because as I said, we might not have any kind of strings in the drawing, is that they are ordered sequentially. Okay. So if you are finding that you're not getting the right result, it's because your Kogo points are highly likely to be going all over the place numbers wise. So as you can see here, I've got 99, etc. They're going up as they should. So I'm going to pick a point group. These points were added potentially by the surveyor. They've gone into a group with anything with CB, and I'll highlight that in a minute. And then if we click on Create Update Alignment, you'll see we actually get pretty much the same result. And the reason why is because the polyline is connecting between those Kogos. So let's bring this down, and then we put the tolerance all the way down because we want to have a smaller radius as possible rather than let the system try and assign a radius. Do you know what? Maybe we won't. We'll leave it there. Click Create Update Alignment, and then close. So once you've created it, the only way that you can edit it is to either delete and recreate with best fit or use the edit alignment function and grid editor to then refine it that little bit further. It's certainly a great tool if you're doing very large segments of road or long portions of road, such as this one, and you are using the CAD version. This is an excellent tool. The next part of this is to highlight two things. I'm going to very quickly just build on top of this a road. And I've just reminded myself I didn't show you the cross section of the parking bay. Anyway, I was all excited about everything else that was going on in there. Too much to show you. All I'm going to do is just go to the design data form and import a file which contains my design data. Because I've created this from scratch, obviously what I've had to do is save the design data using export, save it as something else, and then import it for this webinar. We've got a couple of let's put this on here. And because I've loaded it, I saved it with, and there was a different template applied, I've got to go and repick the template. And I'll rebuild. Now, the reason why I'm showing you the cross section There we go, close this down. The reason why I'm showing you the cross section, which I've just lost, where's it gone? Let's just open up a random one, is to show you what's going on with the subgrade. Now, if you are creating an IFC file and you want to have your, for example, benching, doesn't have to be benching, you want to have that benching included in your IFC file. It's quite a bit of work to, in the template editor, create the subgrade pairs or code pairs, sorry. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to head to the template in Toolspace, right click, edit template. This is the template which has been assigned, but we have subgrade being assigned to other codes through this benching. When we go edit subgrade, can you see there I've got LFA asterisk, LBE asterisk. And the reason for this is because when I go set subgrade, you can now put an asterisk, which means that if you have a code pair, which in my case is L face to L bench, how on earth, if they've all got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 added on the end, would I do this in version 25? Well, it's with great difficulty. With version 26, you can now just say LFA. I could put face asterisk and L bench asterisk. Click apply and exit. Then pop in. I've seen this used for retaining walls as well, so this could be helpful if you're wanting to just have some kind of material assigned. I'll talk to the slight downside and both sides. So if I get it on the other side, apply and exit. Okay. Now, nothing's going to change on this job, but that does now mean that if it sees those two code pairs, or sorry, it sees that code pair in any way, it will now apply a material, even if you just want to put 0.0001 of something, so that when you do export this, even to the subgrade model manager, you will have a layer of subgrade that is defined to create the subgrade surface. Okay, meaning that yes, there is a skew on here. Okay, I wouldn't necessarily expect you to expect 100 mil of thickness here and on the back because of the way that obviously it's being applied. But as I said, it's more to do with when you're looking at subgrade surfaces or you're looking to export and create an IFC file and you need something in that particular area. The last thing we're going to look at is clone alignment. And we're simply going to just head up to the roads tab. Todd and I were talking about this earlier about the number of sort of profile tools that are now available to users. There's sort of a group of them now sitting under the profile strings tab, shall we say, sitting on the ribbon here. And I can't remember for the life of me now which ones appear in Civil 3D and which ones don't. But for the CAD users, you've now got clone string. So you maybe sort
Clone
of
string
think
doesn't exist in
it doesn't,
the
not in
Civil
Civil
3D
3D.
because it can't clone the alignment.
No. String from code is something that if you haven't seen it, it will generate a string for you. It creates, in either version, it creates an alignment for you and then puts a string draped using sample positions draped onto a nominated surface. And then you can use it to basically run, for example, match to string. You can run that through this one command. Obviously, you're familiar with profile string. That generates a profile string. On top of an alignment you've already created. Clone string is kind of another sort of tool in the toolbox where it will do two things. It will create an offset of your alignment for you, and at the same time, create an offset and a copy of your vertical design. I think I just said profile for you. I meant alignment. It will do both anyway. It will create a copy of your alignment and your string. So here's the alignment. Here's the and the string. Sorry. Here's the new profile. We'll leave it at clone. We'll maybe go right side. I'll offset 3.5 meters because that's the road width up to the edge of bitumen. The tangent spacing arts, this is all straightforward stuff, but the swathe width, if you're wondering what swathe means, it's appeared in a few different forms in our software. Swathe is section width. Okay. I'm not putting a template on here. I might want to put one on later on, but at the moment, my section width is 0.1 left and right, nice and tidy. If you click clone profile and then head over to tool space, what will happen is that you'll get a copy of the alignment. It is static, by the way. Our offset alignments in the CAD version don't dynamically connect back to the parent. It is a static alignment, so you can use the editing tools we looked at earlier to edit it. But if we have a look at profile strings and open the vertical grading editor, now if I hadn't have told you what I was opening there, you probably would have gone, he's just opened up the center line, and it's because it looks identical. Okay, if we go to design constraints and go show string and go add, and I'm just going to say, show me road CL, just a label. Uh, what you probably can't see there particularly well is that actually the centre line of the road projected straight on. So as with our offset alignments, it matches up the tangents, but it's also done the same with the vertical curves and adjusted them accordingly to ensure that you get this exact clone. So from this point, you could decide, well, do you know what? I'm now going to begin to work with this. It's given me a great starting point to manage the right side or right edge of my design, or left edge, whichever way you're going. But it's given me a great starting point to begin to work on that right edge, knowing exactly where that road centerline line happens to be, or centerline line of my string, or any string for that matter, happens to be. Now that ends my part of the presentation, and because I've got two screens, I'm aware that there's been a lot of potential communications going on through the chat and the Q&A, sorry. And so Todd, I'll just hand back to you because I'm loath to close anything down, just in case there's anything that we can show before we end the session.
No, we responded to most of the questions. Most of them were positive affirmations for all the things we've been throwing into the software. So that is great to get some feedback from the user base.
Fantastic.
Um, the question that came in was about there was a question about the dish through the intersection one, asking if it could be like the parking bay one where it does the merge perfectly. But I think that one's the Shane, I think, is going to have a look at doing that in the script at a later point. But perhaps it's also worth, and I don't know whether I'm going to put you on the spot here, at least you
Mm.
could show it, the standard curve variations in the script X. I don't know if you have the latest
No, I
versions
don't.
of
I
those. Yeah,
inadvertently
yeah,
I
I
haven't
didn't
got
think
those
so.
in.
That's why I was a bit loath to jump in and ask you to do it.
I
But
will
yeah,
actually just mention it because yeah, through my playing around with the forms yesterday and the uploads, there is going to be another folder in here which some of our team have spent a huge amount of time on. Todd, I'll just speak to it very quickly, but there
no,
is one in
thank you.
there. I think it's called standard curve transitions, and what that'll give you is a list of uh,
Curve types per
yeah,
jurisdiction,
curve
isn't it?
types per yeah, and it'll allow you to basically just say, well, look, on my template at the moment, I just need to transition to a whatever happens to be a barrier curb. Okay. You nominate the curb or the code on your design that you want to use as the control, and then the variation, whichever one you pick and whatever curb type you pick, will then manage your curb design for you, transitioning into that new curb, just that curb only, and then also allowing you to transition out of it as well in the single variation. Apologies, I don't have that one to show you, but that will be there in the list.
No, but at least it's a point on the chat. So that's all I wanted to
Yep,
get it to. There is something coming that
there
will be
is.
there. Jonathan and I are both running beta versions of the software that are in slightly different pieces. My script X list looks vastly different to Jonathan's because I haven't uploaded all the most recent stuff.
No.
But no, there are no other questions there. There are a few questions about some suggestions to enhance the software, which I think we all probably already had on our list of improvement suggestions for our development team. But
Okay.
yeah, that's it.
All
Thank
right.
you
Well, in that
very much,
case,
Jonathan.
no, well, thank you. Just 50 different things. If you've got a phone on you, just go nuts now with the camera. So yeah, Todd and I will have this recording. This will be up. I expect even by this afternoon. It may be up, but if you subscribe to our, I know I sound like someone on who I loathe on YouTube who said, "Oh, subscribe halfway through you watching a video," but if you do subscribe, you do get notified of when we update and put new videos up. So, including this webinar, if you go to our website, YouTube channel, click subscribe, and then you can change your notifications to say, yep, tell me when these guys upload videos. So if you want the webinar, know when it's gone up, you don't have to go and look manually, then feel free to do that. Um, the licensing, which we mentioned in the first slide, is going to be we'll basically be having a webinar presented by our IT team next Wednesday. You can subscribe to that. I would recommend you do, and even if you're not going to attend, get your IT team to look at it because there's some interesting stuff, particularly with cloud licensing coming online with that. Uh, Colleague Jack Horton will be presenting the Stringer Topo V26. Some fantastic stuff in there with attributes and bits and pieces. Really, really interesting webinar. That'll be next Thursday. And then really that is, I guess that's it, Todd, isn't it? Other than thank you. And if you want to,
That is it.
if you want to,
There is a question I'm typing an answer to. I might just say out loud.
Go on.
out loud easier. The question was about how to create an IFC object for a large area of like a concrete hard stand. They tend to use the subgrade model manager, which is certainly a way to do it. So if you've already made the model, what I was going to respond with was you'd make it as a CSD grading and you'd add a template that has a subgrade element to it so that it forms the subgrade. And then then all you would need to do is make a model builder model that incorporates that grading, and then that can be exported out using the IFC tool that I showed before. So that would be the workflow you could do it there. So you're probably already most of the way there. You just, once you get the new version, you can make a model builder model and then run IFC export, and it'll throw it out into an IFC file
Yeah,
built from whatever the subgrade conditions are on the template that's applied. Probably the key thing I didn't really highlight in mine, and I'm going to say it now, is on the sections that I use for Islet Street and roads 1, 2, and 3, I actually added a subgrade condition to every piece in my model. Um, Even if you don't want there to be any depth, you want it to be zero depth, but you want it to be part of the IFC export, you can put a zero depth layer inside
yeah,
your subgrade definition, and then it would throw across into the IFC. If you have just a code in your template that has no subgrade conditions at all, then it won't go through into the IFC or more into the subgrade model manager in CSD. Cool,
lovely.
that's it.
Thank you very much. Well, look, folks, when you leave this session, please hold on because it will ask you to complete a webinar feedback form. A lot of people just kill Zoom at this point, but if you can hang on just for like 30 seconds and just tell us what you think, that would be tremendously helpful. And if you want to sign up to the newsletter, you get notified about our upcoming webinars. Probably you would get notified about the following two that are coming up as well next week. Thank you very much, Todd, for being my co-presenter today.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, for being my co-presenter.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you all for your attendance, and
Yes.
we look forward to seeing you all very soon.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Have a great time. Great
Thank
day.
you. Cheers.